radio station with talk, music, weather, and traffic for Montgomery County. Have a question, comment about one of our shows? Want to know how to reach a host? Just contact the station on irlonestar.com or call in and leave a message at 936-647-3776. Get involved with your community with Lone Star Community Radio.
Thank you for listening to Lone Star Community Radio. This program was broadcasted and recorded live from the LSCR studios in downtown Conroe, Texas. Lone Star Community Radio is supported by listeners like you. Donate and sponsor today. For more information on getting involved with Lone Star Community Radio, contact us at lscrstudios@gmail.com or visit us online at www.irlonestar.com.
Hey, this is Skippy from Mornings with Lone Star with Dick and Skippy. You're listening to Lone Star Community Radio on 104.5 KCZW LP Conroe and 106.1 KZCC LP Conroe and worldwide on irlonestar.com.
Everybody, you're listening to the Cindy Cochran Show, and I'm so glad you are. And if you're on YouTube, you're watching the Cindy Cochran Show, or Facebook, you're watching the Cindy Cochran Show, and listening also, just listening to us, our melodic voice. I don't think that's a word, but anyway, 106.1 and 104.5, you can hear us as long as you're driving between the Woodlands and New Waverly, I think it is. Isn't that our reach, New Waverly? Yeah. So just drive slow, and maybe you'll make the whole show. Anyway, I have a great guest, and I've already had, blowing up on my text saying, oh, Denton, we hadn't heard from Denton in so long. Dennis O'Connor said to be sure and tell you hi. He had all these big capital letters on all his texts, and he said,
I haven't seen Dennis in a while.
I know, and you would never recognize him, and he's a whole different person. But anyway, and then Jimmy Cirillo said he loves history, and he loves Texas history, and Sam Houton was like his real life hero, and so I'm glad we're going to be talking about old Sam.
Good.
And you got to tell everybody, let's see, we met at Silver Rock, right? Isn't that how we met?
Yeah.
And you were doing the documentary on Sam Houton.
We were working on the film, yeah.
That's right. And let's see, how many years is that? It seemed like it was forever. But everybody knew it was going to be worth it. It's just, oh my word. And was it because you were adding more things, or you were finding out more things, or was it just because Mike and Brian? Oh, I hope he wasn't. Mike and Brian were just being slow. I just didn't know what all was happening. Why I kept coming in there, and there you were again. And I went, oh goodness, poor thing. But you had such detail in that documentary. It was beautifully shot, to Mike and Brian's credit. It was beautifully shot, but you did have such detail and such information that nobody else knew.
Well, it took us a long time to do it because we were trying to raise money the whole time.
Yeah.
But the blessing of that was, the blessing of it taking us so much longer to do it, is we had time to really deeply research things and dig out all that detail. So it's actually, as hard as it was and as stressful as it was, it's actually a much better film than it would have been if it had been like an 18-month or 2-year slam dunk. Well,
I love the fact that you talked to so many relatives and you read letters and
we found some neat stuff. I talked to James Haley, the Houston's biographer, wrote the screenplay, and we were trying to figure out how to approach it, and he said, look, he goes, if you're gonna do a thing on Houston's life, his whole life, it's like a Christmas tree. And there are certain things you have to cover. I mean, you have to talk about his time in Tennessee. You have to talk about the Battle of Horseshoe Bend and his relationship with Andrew Jackson, his relationship with Indians, blah, blah, blah. You got to cover all that if you're going to cover his life. So that's the Christmas tree. That's the body of everything that you have to cover. But then we're going to decorate it with lots of little ornaments, little stories, and fun pieces of trivia and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And so that's what we did.
That's right. I mean, but taking on something like that and feeling like, Sam Houton has been written about a lot. Mm-hmm. But was it the truth, or was it glossed over? Was it just, to make him look really good, or were there things that you found that made him more human than you thought?
Yes, we approached it from, and you have to really be careful because there's a lot of lore that's out there. There are a lot of stories that are out there. And we said, if we can't prove it, meaning document it,
Right.
we're not going to say it. If we can't, we're going to drill all the way to the bottom, and we're just going to tell people what we know and what we don't. And then we even put a page on the website, which is down at the moment for reconstruction. But anyway, we created a page, Myths and Legends. And I told James Haley, we're just going to tell people what we know. And we can address some of the myths and legends and say, this one's true. Yes, this one actually happened. That one is complete nonsense. It's a myth. This one we really don't know. It depends on who you want to believe. And we just put it out there and told people what we knew and what we didn't.
Wasn't it funny, though, that's like I had put in my Facebook post, I said, because we need to, listen, learn from history so that we don't repeat it. And of course, that's been said, before very famously. But to me, it seems like we're on a loop about making the same mistakes again because we're not learning. I think we have learned a lot, but I just don't think that we're practicing learning what we've learned a lot of times, because to see the same stuff come back and you go, y'all just need to read what Sam Houton went through just because he did this or that. And I think that he's so, to little kids, like my age, when I'm not a little kid, but when I was a little kid, I would go to Herman Park and the statue of Sam Houton. And we would sit there and just stare at that, and it would just be like, this is so weird. This guy did all these things that we were learning like in school, and here he is on this horse at a park. This is so, and I thought, this will be here forever, and I can take my kids to come see it, and their kids can come see it. That's not actually true to a lot of statues that didn't make the cut.
Well, listen, every dumb idea
Yes.
that has ever come along has been tried before, and they didn't work. Or, it's one of the biggest reasons for studying history. You're right, because these ideas, there are no new ideas really
Under the sun.
Under the sun, it's all been tried. You go back to the Romans, you go back to times long before Christ, and you find the Caesars, and you don't have to just go back 50 years or back to the Civil War, 150 years or something.
That's right.
Nothing is new under the sun, and we can learn a lot from studying what happened before.
Well, Samuel was telling me, he said, Grandma, please quit telling me what, that you understand what I'm going through at school, because it was a whole different time and age that y'all didn't have the same problems that we have as teenagers. You didn't. And I went, okay, all right. Well, then I'll tell you what. All I need you to do is to read some chapters in my diary and see in those things when you go like, because there were so many times I wanted what am I going to do? I failed this. Mother's going to kill me. I don't know. And I think I'm going to just drive off the cliff. That's all I'm going to do. And kids are actually, they're doing things like that. They're just because they can't accept what's going on and what's happening, and they feel like it's only happening to them. And what psychiatrists will do is they want to make you understand you are not alone in this, that there are other people that have experienced the very same thing and they come out of it, but we're going to work processes and things like that. And that's to help. And I remember, as you probably have too, when growing up, that you feel like nobody else has ever done what I've done, or no one else has ever thought what I've thought. And then you read some book and you go, oh shoot, I think I'm not as bad as I thought I was.
I'm not alone.
Yes, that's right. And so I think that's important for kids to understand that, but parents are scared to death to tell them what they used to do, and so the kids won't go, well, my mother and dad did that, I'm going to do that too.
Well, and I think on social media anyway, people put forward what they want other people to think of them. They create their own and curate their own image.
Right.
And often it's, it looks like they have no problems. It looks like they've got it all figured out. It looks like whatever they want it to look like. And, you don't have to dig very far into the surface, and you find the human condition, and you find that we've all got problems, and we all have hurts. We've all suffered pain. And I may not want you to know those things, especially my faults,
Right.
because I'm worried, what are you going to think of me?
Right.
What is
exactly.
Cindy really going to think of me if I tell her what's really going on? How are you, Denton? I'm fine. How are you? Is everybody's fine. Well, everybody's not fine.
Yeah, that's right.
But
purple cow.
if I don't
yeah.
trust you, I'm probably not going to tell you, because I don't know who you're going to tell. And so we all play this game that everybody's fine. And
Well, it was interesting to me, and I couldn't believe God put this in the Bible. Confess your faults one to another. Confess your sins one to another. So he didn't say you tell everybody your sins and you'll be better off. No, you confess your sins, they got to confess their sins. You confess each other's sins, and then you realize, oh, we both have done that before. And so it's not that unusual. And that's what psychiatrists usually try and get people to do. But because Samuel has that attitude, it makes me feel like when you tell him the story of Sam Houton and tell him what he went through and how he overcame so many things, that if he can do that, why couldn't you do
yeah,
that?
good point. It really did. He overcame a lot. That's one of the big lessons of his life is perseverance.
Yes, right. And so young kids feel like because you came from a totally different world, and we did. I mean, he did. But the there's so many nuances that you just go like, see, he felt the same way this, or he was scared about that, and then
the technology was different, the medicine was different, lots of things were different, but the human condition was the same.
I think that's
and
what
it always will be.
That's what he's saying. He said, you don't have the pressure. You didn't have the pressure of social media. And I said, no, because you can text things and not have to, be accountable for it. But when I was growing up, they'd tell you right to your face what they thought of you. And it was a face-to-face. Everybody knew, and they gossiped, and the gossip was there. And so gossip just probably goes faster now. But I mean, it was just as you tell one person, and you can believe by the end of the day at school, everybody knew. Mm-hmm. So, but that's what I think we have got to look at this, and how would you put him in modern times, and how do you feel like he would react to modern times, Sam Houton?
Well, that's anybody's guess. I know that he persevered through a lot. He got knocked down over and over and over again, and he just refused to lay down. He kept getting back up. There's an awful lot to say for that.
Sure.
If get back up and keep going. Figure it out. Don't stop. Just put one foot in front of the other and keep going. And as James Haley said, he had a backbone of strap iron, and he did. It's the ability to endure that kind of physical and emotional pain, and that kind of criticism, withering criticism. Criticism that we wouldn't really understand today in our culture. I mean, back then, among Southern gentlemen and that kind of thing, you called him a coward. That was a big deal.
Sure.
You called somebody a coward today, they'd probably laugh at it or look at you funny, like, what are you talking about?
What's a coward?
Back then, that was a big deal.
That was a slap in the face with the glove.
Oh, they shot each other over stuff like that. Had duels and stuff. But it was an interesting time, and there's a lot we can learn from that guy.
Do you think, now you just said, you and James Haley were talking about the iron spine he has, but do you feel like there was times, did he ever confess to anyone or tell anyone about he was scared? He wanted to give up?
I don't know that I ever heard him say he wanted to give up or anything. His real confidant was, which he met later in life, was his wife, Margaret. Mm-hmm. They had a soulmate relationship, if there ever was such a thing. And he was in Washington, D.C. a long time. He would write her, because she never went to Washington. So he was lonely. He was dealing with all kinds of stuff in Washington, and he used to write her just constantly. And he would read a chapter in his Bible every night, and he would tell her what he was reading and what he thought about it. And he would listen. He was going to East Street Baptist Church in Washington, and she was a very devout Baptist, and he was just kind of always believed in God very deeply, but religiously, doctrinally anyway, he was kind of a wandering soul in some ways. He had a lot of Cherokee spirituality in him, having lived with the Cherokee for so long.
Oh, that's interesting to mix that with the...
So he was kind of on this journey. He's figuring it out this whole time, and he would tell her about the sermons he was listening to and what he liked about them and what he didn't, and how it applied to what he was doing there in Washington and everything. And, of course, he finally came around and got baptized in Independence, Texas, and became what we would describe as a traditional Christian. He overcame the bottle, largely overcame his anger. I mean, Margaret really put a lot of his pieces in place. He has a beautiful testimony and story. And, most of us do. I think that's what draws us to Sam, because there aren't too many lightning bolts in the sky and some 6-year-old becomes
Right.
Billy Graham, we're all on this journey.
Right.
Wherever you end up, nobody has this thing figured out.
No, I think they do.
It's a growth process. Faith is a faith development thing, and that was certainly true in Sam's case.
Well, did you ever try and explain to your kids about how you feel this way now, but in about 2 weeks, you're going to have a whole different feeling about it? And they go, "What are you talking about? I'm going to love him forever." Or, and that kind of thing. I'm like, not so. And try to explain the feelings that you have, that you feel are so solid, and are going to change. And so when you look at stuff, to help you, step back from the ledge and go like, let me give this about 2 weeks and we'll see what happens. And that's about what times that the news organizations would give people to forget. Whatever mistake anyone made, they tell the politicians, give it 2 weeks, don't talk about it anymore, it'll go away. And so a lot of times the news is so prolific, and they'll keep things coming up so they can keep the clicks coming, or
they're trying to make money.
Yeah, and that they found out that everybody liked to have that kind of gossip come around. So I think that in history, in learning about Sam Houton and the battles and the anticipation of the battles, and that he was just involved in so many different aspects of it, it's mind-boggling how he could put up with that, and how, I don't know, I think that your documentary makes him more human. But whenever what's the Broadway play that everybody wanted to see, and it was the I hate when I start stuff and I go like, okay, this is Hamilton. Okay. Thank you very much, Brian.
I saw Mary Poppins on Broadway, so that's
so that's what you thought
more
of.
my speed. Yeah, right.
Well, Samuel got so excited about the music of it and learning about it. He started researching it, and I went, oh my word, is this what we need to be doing with some of the more historical events and lives and things? Because he just loved that. And if you said anything about Hamilton, what was going on then, he knew. He'd talk about it.
Well, Hamilton died in one of those duels we were talking about a few minutes ago.
Oh, that's right.
Shot and killed by Aaron Burr.
Aaron Burr, that's that's right. And they have that song, that beautiful song in there about Aaron and him and their
brilliant
conflict.
Man, though, from the West Indies. He was so strong with George Washington. Fought at Yorktown, charged to Redoubt Number 10 with some men. I mean, he was a brilliant figure, and Hamilton was, Hamilton and Jefferson were enemies politically anyway. They were just polar opposite people, and they had these fights in Washington's administration and everything. But the idea that you had that collection of people that showed up on the world stage at the same time,
yes,
and they all came together at the same time and formed our country is amazing.
Yeah, think somebody has something to do with that? I don't know. It's a Big Bang Theory. Yes. I love, that's what I love about, you straw back and you see the path that people have taken and how they meet up and what ideas come about and all. And I remember you telling me about that you were working with the states' rights and the states, they were going to have a convention about coming together and the states taking back.
Oh, the Convention of States. Yeah.
Convention of States, yes. Did that come off?
I've been out of touch a little bit. They're working on it. It's a process where in the for those that don't know what we're talking about, in the United States Constitution, Article number 5 says that the states can propose amendments to the Constitution. Now, all 27 amendments have come from the Congress. The Congress can propose an amendment. It goes out to the states, and the states vote it up or down and ratify it or not. One of if probably the last thing they did at the Constitutional Convention, George Mason stood up and said, guys, it's been a long, hot summer. We've talked this thing to death. We're all exhausted. We're ready to get out of here. I get it. But I got one more thing. And they said, what? And he said, if history has anything to say about it, talk about learning from history. He said and I'm paraphrasing, but he said somehow or another, even this federal government that we put all these shackles on and everything, somehow it will mushroom out of control and lord its power over the states and over the people. If that happens, they need some kind of ripcord. They need some mechanism by which they can amend or propose amendments to the Constitution that doesn't require the approval of the national legislature.
Well, yeah.
And they all looked at each other and went, you know what? He's right.
That's right.
They unanimously passed it and inserted that language into Article 5 that says the states can propose amendments apart from Washington, has nothing to do with Washington,
Right.
on purpose.
Right. Because
And-
in the voting season, people talk about, well, that's not in our Constitution, or we put in our Constitution that you can do this or that with voting. And because it's not federalized in that sense, it's not everybody do the same thing. I think that's interesting, and then you see how it works. Like
I think they have to have 34 states. 34 states have to come together and sign essentially a petition to say we want to have this states convention. Right now, I think they're at 16 or 17. Maybe it's even 18, but they're about halfway there. So made me kind of nervous at first until I looked into it more and more and more, and I got more and more comfortable. And I mean, if you assume for a second, let's say they propose something crazy. Pick your crazy,
okay,
whatever.
Let's pick.
We're going to get rid of guns.
No electric. Oh,
We're gonna let's just say they're gonna it's
Come take
it's
your
a
guns.
Trojan horse, and they're gonna abolish the Second Amendment, repeal the Second Amendment. I was like, okay, that isn't gonna happen. But let's suppose it did for the sake of argument. Let's say they had a convention and they proposed something like that. What happens to it then? It goes back out to the states, and a supermajority of states, 38 states, have to approve it or it dies. So after the states would propose an amendment, the rest of the process is the same as it would have been otherwise if the Congress proposed it. So if you just looked at the 11 states of the Old South, and if you added in North Dakota, Wyoming, Montana, okay, no way is any 38 state legislatures
agree.
come together
Yeah.
and agree they ought to do something. It's probably a good idea.
I
Probably ought to be
think, I
done.
think so too. I mean, it's like Gavin Newsom has proposed. Now, see, this is what I want to know: what power he has about making all of the California people have to get rid of their gas-guzzling cars or gas cars, and they have to now be on electricity, electric cars. When he proposes something like that, and by 2035 they're all going to be gone, like all the gas cars will be gone. Those kind of statements go like this over most people's head because they know you can't do that.
I haven't read the California Constitution, but I would be shocked if something like that were in there, if the governor were legally that powerful. So that's something they're going to have to sort out. The old idea was that each state would be we would have a situation where the states kind of, it was an incubator that they could try their own thing, and
Right.
each states could experiment, and we would figure out what the best ideas are, and if something works in Illinois, then maybe it'll work in Georgia or wherever.
Right.
And so if the people of California decided that's a good idea, they're free to try it. I'll be surprised if it makes it. But
Well, you hate when they do something like that and they don't explain. Okay, so what's going to happen with the trucks, the 18-wheelers, and all of that? How are you going to keep them moving? And we have bad enough problems with the supply line now. All we have to do is have them standing by the electric thing, waiting for it to charge up for them to be able to move on, and we don't have the infrastructure for it. And that's what kills me, is they want to do this. We've got years and years and years and years of fossil fuel. And the fracking and the natural gas and all the things that we could be doing. But we're now going to OPEC and we're going to beg them for more oil that because we're taking so much out of our reserve that we're going to have to do something with that. That's amazing. And I think the forefathers would be like, "Whew, I'm so glad we got through this."
People in fact do move with their feet. I mean, I rented a U-Haul in Austin about 3 years ago, and the lot was jammed with equipment, trucks and trailers of every kind and all this. And the guy's doing this paperwork, and I kind of made a joke with him. I said, so you got any coupons? Can I get a deal or something? It looks like business is kind of slow, And he laughed, and he goes, well, it depends on where you're going. And I go, okay. And he said, if you're going to California, I give you a heck of a deal. And I still didn't get it. And I said, yeah? And he goes, we don't have any equipment in California. He said, it's all here and in Florida. And he said, we don't know what we're going to do. We think we're going to put it on rail cars and just reposition it back out there. He said, there is a traffic jam on I-10 of people streaming out of California coming to Texas and Florida. And I went, oh, wow. So
that is amazing. Well, I knew there was a big refugee camp we were going to have to put up for Californians that are coming in. But I was shocked that the two governors don't see things like that, and they blame Texas or they blame Florida for being good and not having tax everybody to death and all that. So it's funny to me that they don't see it, but they never see it, it seems like.
Well, I've got a good friend in, look, some big tech firm moves from Silicon Valley to Austin, whatever. They're going to bring all the kids with them, and they're all Bernie supporters. But everybody else, I've got a really good friend of mine who moved here from Orange County about 5 years ago, actually about 5 years ago. And not Marin County, Orange County. And he said, Denton, I was born in Orange County. My parents live in Orange County. I have family buried there. It's all I've ever known. I'm from there. He said, I just couldn't take it anymore. And he left, very successful financial guy. He left and came here, and he still goes out there to visit and see friends and stuff like that. But he said, I think, and nobody asked me, but I think they're draining their brain trust, and they're losing so many people with ideas and energy, and we are the beneficiaries of that.
Elon Musk, come here and build we need the chips that we have to have. And they kept saying they're going to build that in Austin. I hated that. I hate it because I wish they were building it, like in Willis or something like that.
Hewlett Packard moved to Spring.
Yeah,
Hewlett Packard's headquarters is in Spring, and they just moved their aviation division headquartered here at the Conroe Airport.
You remember Hughes Tool? Do you remember?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it's in the Woodlands now. Mm-hmm. And he has a museum there. My dad worked for Hughes Tool forever in heat treat. And we went to look at that, and he couldn't believe it. He said, this is like history. This is my history. This is, made him feel old. He was like, oh my goodness. But this is, and the patents and things like that. Yeah. To him, it was like, yesterday. And so it's interesting And that's why history is so interesting, is because you can relate it to what's going on now. It doesn't seem like they learned lessons that and when people say, yes, we want to be socialists, or we want to bring that to fruition, and we're going to do this, and the way they talk, it scares people that haven't lived long enough to see those things go by the wayside, hopefully, and that you don't get too many people from California or New York that moves in and wants to bring their ideas and try it out here because they can make more money out here.
Well, all these businesses are leaving because they literally can't live with the economic consequences of what they voted for, of what they created out there.
Yes.
It created an environment that they literally could not survive business-wise. So how much does it cost to move your headquarters from one place to another? I mean, millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars, however much. But, people adjust. They vote with their feet. People make decisions. But you're right. I mean, look at Venezuela, oil rich, one of the richest countries in South America.
Example.
And then in a short span of, 15 years or so, they were just eating their pets and eating zoo animals, and because there's no, it's literally that bad.
Yeah.
And ideas have consequences. As one agitator famously put it, elections have consequences. They absolutely do. You're right.
Yeah, that's right. And he knew that if Hillary didn't run and that Biden would have run at that time, that his agenda would not go on. And it was the most pitiful thing in the world. I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican, it was the most pitiful thing in the world when he came out and stood next to Joe Biden, and Joe Biden said, "I'm withdrawing from the race," and Hillary standing on the other side of him. It was so sad. It was like, this is so mean, because what have you promised him that caused him to, because he wanted to be president so bad, and he thought it was just natural that he would be running for president. So it was a strange thing. And when people kept trying to say, in fact, I think he said every idea that Joe had didn't work. So,
well, look at this. Look at one of the, you should support. I think you should find ideas that have like 80% support. And by the time you get through making mistakes, and you're going to make some, you're down to 74% support, and by the time the media gets through lying about you, you're going to be down to 66% support, and you still win.
Yes.
And the idea of term limits, a term limit amendment in the Constitution,
right,
has about 80% support of the American people among Democrats, among Republicans, and independents. They're all a little different, but it averages out to a stunningly high level of support. So the question is, if 80% of the Republican or of the American people support something like that, then why don't we have it? And that's back to the Convention of States. We're not going to get a term limit amendment out of the Congress, no matter who's in power.
Right.
The states are going to have to assert their sovereignty over the federal government and impose that scale of change.
And they can do that.
They can, absolutely can. Absolutely can. And that changes the incentives, I think. If you're going to change the behavior of politicians, you have to change the incentives that are putting pressure on them to do what they're doing now. And I think, Mitch McConnell said once, he said, "Oh, well, we have term limits. They're called elections." I said, "No, Mitch, that doesn't change the incentives. Because if I'm not going to be in office 2 years from now, I don't have to vote for your dumb bill.
Right.
And you don't have to vote for mine.
Yes.
And I don't have to raise money. Because I'm not going to, why do I need to raise money?" So it fundamentally changes the incentive structure, and I think that's what we're going to have to get to.
Well, in the beginning, when we came over here and we put together our government, wasn't there, because people were working the fields and they were working, and to come in and stay longer than a couple of years or so was hard on them. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't something that they wanted to do. Of course, the money wasn't there either. It's like kind of money that they could get, because it was a sacrifice, right?
Oh, it was, yeah. You know, I read David McCullough's book on John Adams, which is just a fantastic read. Easily one of the best books I think I've ever read. Jefferson has been a hobby of mine since I was a child. I mean, 6th or 7th grade. I've really been kind of eaten up with Jefferson and learning about Jefferson. And so this book comes out, and I said, you know, I really don't know anything about John Adams. I ought to read this book. So I did. And one of the things I came away with, besides enormous respect for John Adams, was a knowledge of what he gave up, what he sacrificed for this country was unbelievable. I mean, the long absences from Abigail and his family when he was in Europe, that's one. But he could have been a filthy rich lawyer if he had maintained a law practice and just selfishly said, I'm going to get mine, I'm going to make a bunch of money, I'm going to build a big business. And, you know, he could have done extremely well, and he didn't. He devoted his life to public service at great sacrifice.
Well, he was the visionary that you're looking for in politicians, and someone that's not here for, they want to be here for a long time and they're just going to get by and tell you what you want to hear and that kind of thing. But the ones that are doing this and hope to get so much done that then the person coming behind them will be able to take up the whip and go forward. Because that's what happens is we get so frustrated because these guys come in 2 years, totally mess everything up, and then somebody's going to have to come in after them and take 2 years just cleaning up, and then to try and get things back in order. So, and I'm not naming names or anything, but I'm just saying that I mean, it's like the games that you play. Like, okay, these won. Okay, we got to live with this. Okay, now our guys won, so now that we're going to live with this. And then the most famous statement of all times in one of the debates was, "Are you better off now?" That's
That was Reagan.
Yeah, that's going to be the one to, I don't know why they haven't started doing campaigns like that already. And with the gas prices going up, I know that's, really upsetting everybody.
Inflation and everything now is at a 43-year high, 40-year high. So it is kind of back to what Reagan was facing at the time. And,
it is.
He said, I'm trying to remember the exact quote. I'm going to mess it up. But anyway, it's very, very close to, he said, a recession is when your friend loses his job, depression is when you lose your job, and recovery is when Jimmy Carter loses his job. So he could communicate with humor, very serious points.
Oh, man.
That's why everybody loved him, because he was...
because he wasn't that great of an actor, but he was, he took everything he learned from acting and for speaking and all that and brought it in, and that the stand-ups that he would do were really good. But I really wonder, is there a sense that the youth, we know there's a lot of violence in the youth, and the youth are feeling like, I can do anything I want to do. Nobody's going to touch me. Nobody's going to do anything. But have they, and they're not learning anything like respect the law. I got to respect the law. I got to respect and it's not happening. So do you see any light at the end of the tunnel for, other than putting more police on the streets to correct this?
Well, we'll figure this out over time. We're going to have our fits and starts and that kind of thing. But, Aquinas said that without a moral consensus, there can be no law. Chairman Mao gave the other side of that. He said morality begins at the muzzle of a gun. And so every society is along that continuum somewhere. And the less virtuous you are, the more cops you need. And if you're not going to be controlled by your own sense of morality, your own sense of right and wrong, then you're going to be controlled by the power of the state. You're going to be controlled by the police officer who's outside the room with a gun, and they're going to make you do the right thing, or they're going to, you're going to get free room and board for a long time.
Right.
If you don't. So that's why I think the founders you read the founders, it's impossible to miss. They were very concerned about virtue, and they were concerned about, they said a free society can't survive without a virtuous society. So, you want to defund the police, go ahead, and you'll see what happens.
When you make that call.
And
Nobody's there.
Look what's happening to violent crime right now.
Yeah.
And
there was violent crime way back when in our history. It's been there's been violence all the way. And how they handle that through, putting these people away or shooting them or hanging them. And there was all kind of way they thought this would help, stop the violence happening. I don't think at any time do you think they found the right punishment to stop it?
Well, the idea that, the punishment should be your conscience, if you're a virtuous person. I mean, if you and I are walking out of this building and one of us drops $100 bill and it lands on the sidewalk, the other one's going to pick it up and go, hey, you dropped, here, whoa, you dropped this.
That's right.
A lot of people would just shove it in their pocket and go their own way. But I don't know that I could live with myself if I did that. And you're not going to break into my house and or steal my car or whatever, not because you're afraid of the law enforcement, but you and I both believe it's wrong to do that. So
Right.
our behavior is kept in check by our sense of right and wrong. If you don't believe there is any such thing as right and wrong, then Katie, bar the door. And they're getting a lot of that in the universities. I mean, at Harvard and so many other places, they don't even admit that there is such a thing as right and wrong. It's just whatever you find it to be and whatever you find it to be.
Oh my word! Well, it's like my mom taught me by her own actions that she would go in the store, and if something would have been put down in the cart and she forgot to put it up there and have them charge it, she'd take it back and pay for it. And so that's what she taught me. And so I'm forever leaving something at the bottom or not bring it up there, and they didn't charge me for it. And I'm all the way out and I put all the groceries up, and then I go like,
yeah, you go back, don't you?
Mom, this is for you, and go back and pay. But the greatest thing is the look on the people's faces. What? You came all the way back for that? Yeah, you just should have kept it. It'd have been fine. And I went, well, some of my mama taught me, so here's the 50 cents for that. And look, but I think that then after you do that, you feel good, because they were so happy to see somebody would do something like that, because it's horrible that's the way it is, because it's kind of rare to them. Mm-hmm. They see too many people take stuff all the time out, and that's it.
I love the Little League. I love the Little League World Series. I like to watch that. And
yes.
I remember when that pitcher hit the kid in the head with the ball.
God,
and it didn't hurt him, but he didn't know the kid fell to the ground, and it took him a second or two to realize he wasn't actually hurt or whatever, but it killed the pitcher.
Yeah.
And the batter, eventually got up and took his base, and he goes over there. But he could tell the pitcher was really upset and emotionally distraught over this. And the kid walked over to the pitcher's mound and hugged him and said, "Hey, it's okay. I'm not hurt, and let's go on. Let's play the ball. Let's play the game." And that made the news.
All over
I'm
the
glad
place.
I did, but I mean,
me too. It's sad that would have to make the news. That's such
what a great
weird
example,
thing. Yeah.
And
a
I wish
great
that happened
example.
in professional sports a lot more.
Yes, yeah, exactly. I think Altuve would do that, but I don't know for sure. But anyway, I think the different people we love in our sports is great. I just don't know how you keep your head up without having a neck brace on, because you've got so much knowledge of everything in your head. I can say one thing, and whenever Denton and I start talking, we run the gamut of everything, and he knows about everything. I don't, but I mean, I learn so much from just talking to you.
We know what we read. We know what we like, and
but I don't read. I said, is there a movie? Is there a movie about that? I'll go look see the movie, or get the book on tape or something. But I don't read. And it was pitiful. My grandmother always said, boy, I can't wait till I get old and I retire, and then I'm going to read. Because I loved reading when I was a little child. I can't wait to do that. And then she became blind, couldn't read.
Wow.
She couldn't read. And so, I mean, she could like get around, but she couldn't sit and read something anymore. And so it was so pitiful. And I realized that, Cindy, you better not do that. Don't wait until you think you're going to be retired from all this and not be able to read. And I thought, okay, fine. All right, I'll read. Does it have pictures in it? Yes, okay. I don't absorb knowledge that way. It is talking to people and all that. I feel like I really understand better what it's all about. And when I read something, I'm running the movie in my head. I'm putting that scene that Sam Houton, his wife, and the problems that they had, and all the things that he did, and like if I was his wife, what would I have done? And that kind of thing.
Well, and things are so much more complicated than we want to make them. History's messy. History's a mess. And, we like it. I've said this so many times. We want everything clean and simple, black and white answers. We want to tie it up and put a bow on it. And we want to explain everything in a 20-second soundbite. And it is never that way. History's very complicated and messy. And we don't have the patience for that.
No.
We don't want to hear another argument or another side. We want it clean and simple. And, if you disagree, or if you have a different point of view, it's not that. That's just something we've got to get beyond. It's not like you're a fellow American with whom I have a disagreement. You're a bad person. You're a Nazi. I mean, why would I listen to your point of view? By definition, you're evil.
Right.
And we've polarized ourselves into this. And you go, wait a minute. You gotta. I can explain this very easily. I can even convince you, but it may take me 3 minutes. I can't do it in 20 seconds.
Right.
But we're so busy interrupting one another.
Oh,
and
boy.
we don't want to hear anything that challenges our safe assumptions. We're very comfortable in this little box of ours, and I don't want that foundation rattled or disturbed. So I'm going to push away any data point or piece of information that makes me uncomfortable. And
we know that the television and movies, but television mostly, and there's so many channels now. Like before growing up, like 3 channels, and that was it. So you really got bombarded with that, and that's whatever they said, you felt that same way. But the channels have diluted our focus of being able to get everything that we need to get from whatever. So all these people are saying all these different things, and the backup and the support and all that becomes difficult to get really excited about one person. So the more and more outrageous they are, or whatever they do, then we pay attention to that. But I think that we understand that history is good for us, and not to take down the statues, not to take down the things that those people did great things, and that's we laud them for that. But every great man, you can go back in their past and the backstory that they have, it will be embarrassing for them and be embarrassing for us to find out about. But the good that they did, let's dwell on that, and not tear things down. That just kills me, because I know the people that that put that up, or the people, the relatives, or and we're Texans, and if they did that to Sam Houton and I was like, oh, they better not take that statue. I'm gonna have to go back to Herman Park and stand there next to the statue and chain myself to it or something. I can remember going like, this is terrible, but it's okay, because we still have history written down. And you start feeling like the statue's everything. It's not. It's what he did, and it's still going on, and is recorded in history. And
I think it's a big mistake to tear down statues. I think we need to put more. Our memorial landscape teaches us a lot.
Yes.
We ought to put up more interpretive signage by them. H.W. Brands said the best solution is probably just to date them.
Exactly.
the statue went up in 1873 or whatever, and you say, okay, this is what the people were thinking in 1873. This was their culture. This is where public opinion was. This is what was going on at the time. Just date them, and it shows you the progression of our country.
And we've
where we
grown,
are
yeah,
now.
how we've grown. And we admit we made mistakes. We admit that, for a long time we didn't. I don't think people want to even dwell on that at all, but we've made mistakes, and we've learned from a lot of things that we've done wrong, and we've gotten better. And so we can't compare ourselves. That's one thing I feel like is bad when you try and compare yourself to China or to Russia or whatever, is that people are in droves trying to come here. There's a reason for it. That they feel like this place, what they have in movies and they have on TV and all that they're seeing there, that this is a great place to be.
This is the least racist, multicultural country that has ever existed. We've had 2 million something Africans that have come here in the last, I need to look it up, 20 or 30 years or whatever, or since the 1970 or something. But I mean, so maybe they didn't get the message. If this place is so horrible and terrible and everything else, why does everybody want to come here? They used to call it the Gates test, raise the gates and see where people run. There are an awful lot of people, obviously nowadays with what's going on right now, that want to come here that are trying to get into the United States. So I'm a big advocate of travel, especially for young people. I think they need to go live in another, go visit, go.
Ain't that the
very
truth?
first time I ever left the United States, I'll never forget it. I was about 20 years old, maybe, somewhere very close to that. And I walked across the bridge into Reynosa, Mexico. And I thought it was cool. It was I thought I was walking onto a Hollywood movie set, actually, because they had the cobblestone streets and the big old-looking Catholic church on the square down there, and people cooking meat out in front of their shops. And I mean, it was just back in the U.S., there was Walmart, and there was, street lights and, and boxwood, landscaping.
Right.
And I came back, I walked across the bridge, and I crossed the little boundary right over the river in the middle of the bridge and reached down and kissed the bridge,
Yeah, once you really experience that, it does have a flash to a lot of things, and this will be fun, but then it doesn't pan out that way. Then, you remember Craig Campobello?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, he's going to be here tomorrow.
Is he really?
Yes, he is. And he's going to go, and he goes, Cindy, what are you doing? You're back on the radio. And I went, yes. And I said, I want you to come see. And he goes, okay, I can do that. And I went, that's great. He's got that same laid back, just, that artist type of feel to him whenever you talk to him. And so I was so excited he's going to come on. And also, Jared Starrett. I don't know if you remember, Jared was... he was very popular. He is very popular in the Conroe, Montgomery County area, and he's moved out a bit. So he's going to call in tomorrow, and we're going to talk about. He's going to Houston, doing a big thing in Houston, and one of our cowboy people. And I'm not a great fan of country western, but this guy is so good looking, and he's just good performer. He's a really good performer. And that he's like a triple threat, and he just goes on, and everybody loves him. And so Jared Starrett will be on the phone. He's not going to be here, girls, but he'll be on the phone, and we'll talk to him about where he's going to be playing in Houston this weekend. And then Craig Campobello is raised all the Texas statues, all the heroes that we have of Texas. He's brought them to life through his bronze sculptures, and so it's going to be so much fun. And listen, we got to tell you, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here.
That's great to be here.
Listen, first responders, we love you. And what's great is that God loves you even more. So, y'all, be safe. Be safe. And go out and call somebody you love and enjoy the day, for crying out loud. Denton,
Beautiful
you
day
gotta
out there.
You got to come back. You got to come back. Okay. All right. Bye-bye, everybody. We'll see you.